The DIESOL podcast,
Developing innovation in English as a second or other language.
episode 89, mobile cameras in the language classroom.
Welcome to Diesel. This is episode 89. We are your hosts. I'm Brent Warner.
And I'm Michelle Reyes.
Hello.
Guess what?
What's up?
We're on YouTube finally. That's
I know.
the scoop.
Yeah, it's only taken us 4 years or so to get on there,
I
but
know. That's
we
where
should
people always started.
I know. Well,
Do you know what?
here's what happened, Michelle.
I was
People told me from the very beginning. They're like, "Oh yeah, just put it up on YouTube at the same time, get it up there, and you'll get." And like some people are like, "Oh, I get at least the same amount of views on YouTube as I do on downloads or whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll get to it," and never got to it. And then like already, I mean, it's been like a less than a week or something like that, and we've already got like
Mhm.
not a ton, but like almost 500 downloads, and like
Mhm.
it's it's like, oh, okay, uh right away. So it's a great place, and we should have been there a long time
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. And it also kind of highlighted for me how I I wasn't necessarily thrilled about going to YouTube initial, not now, but when we first started the podcast, because I thought, oh, another thing to manage. Who's listening to podcasts on YouTube? Because I listened on a podcast player, but in the last probably since the pandemic, I've found a lot of really great true crime podcasts that are
Hmm.
broadcast only on YouTube.
Oh,
And so
really?
now I realize the whole podcast community, yeah, there are some people who are not like on other because they do a lot of the stuff live.
Oh, okay,
And then
okay.
some people are actually moving them later to like Apple Podcasts or something like that, which
Oh,
is really
okay.
cool. So yeah, so find us and then I guess it's the obligatory subscribe and hit the like button.
So are we going to be talking about like having us video versions of the show in the future, or is that are we just going to be
I
putting up
don't
the
know.
audio
That's
versions?
not I think maybe drinks with diesel would be fun as a video because I was reminiscing as I was tagging certain things. I was like, would have been a cool one to have
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, I mean a lot of those podcasters, they always have like the videos of them talking, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, you can
Yeah,
watch it and you can have it going on, or you can listen to it as the podcast version. So
yeah.
we can think about that after episode 100 maybe.
That would
So
require me to not be in my PJs while we're recording.
so that's a big no, is what you're saying. Um,
That's a big no, not now.
all right, fair
Not
enough.
nuts.
So we're on YouTube now. Please go give it a subscribe if you please. I don't think a lot of people know about it because we
Comment.
haven't
It's so
announced
easy
it,
to
but
comment there.
click it,
Maybe we'll get more
subscribe it,
feedback that
comment
way.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That might be good.
Because
And that
I know that on Apple,
uh-huh.
sorry, I was gonna say on Apple on the Apple on other platforms, maybe it's a few more steps to actually give feedback. But I think YouTube is just easy because you can just comment. Most people are already logged into their Gmail account, so there's no having to make a whole other account to be able to comment on something. So
Yeah,
I'm looking forward, hopefully, hearing feedback and maybe we can get ideas on what else is interesting for our audience. I
yeah,
think
for
I'm
sure.
curious about that.
Well, and that also can be a place where we can do giveaways of pins and other things like that too.
Yeah.
So we
Hmm.
still got some of those to give away. So feel free.
Hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so Michelle, today we're talking about cameras,
Cameras.
cell phone cameras mostly.
Hmm.
And so as we say on the show, let's jump in.
Let's dive right in.
Let's dive
Oh,
right in. Oh,
no, last summer was diving. You were the
oh,
pool guy. Now
yeah.
you're the band guy.
Okay. All right. So cameras. About a year ago, Michelle, I wrote an article for Tesol about kind of no prep ways to use cameras in the classroom, and then we never really talked about it on the show. We might have had little bits and pieces here and there, but I thought it
Mhm.
might be a kind of a fun episode to do because all of your students have cameras, right? Like I don't
Mhm.
know of any student these days. I mean, I'm sure there's some, but like at least
Even if
for
it's a bottom of the line phone, it's still it has a camera,
yeah, yeah.
or dual camera.
Yeah, for sure. So there's like some things going on with the camera, and in fact, digital cameras, like the old-fashioned point and shoot digital cameras, I guess, are coming popular again for kind of the younger crowd. So some of the
It's
teachers out
retro
there,
now.
yeah, the retro. No, it's so crazy. It's like the the
It's an
cool
art
pix. The
form.
cool pix is like the retro camera now. So anyways, people have cameras in their pockets, and we're not really taking advantage of them nearly as much as we could in the classroom. And so I thought it might just
Mhm.
be a good thing to talk about a little bit and start sharing some of these ideas, because I think they're, once you start thinking about it, it's like, oh, wait a second, we have all access to all these other things. It's not just the one thing in our class, it's not just the whiteboards or the papers in front of us. We have in our pockets so many tools. We talk about this all the time. But the cameras are great and super powerful, and so let's share some ways to use them. And I'll start off with the first one, which is again going back to Denise Baduli Williams, our friend of the show. This is, I put this in the article, so I'm pulling some of these ideas from the article that I wrote about a
Mhm.
year
Mhm.
ago. But that article was inspired by one of her
Mhm.
presentations about using cameras in the classroom as an icebreaker, which is basically step into class on the first day, pull out your phone, take a look and show your classmates a picture of something recent that you did, right? And that's it, right? So it's like, hey, what did you do recently? But now you have a starting point to have a conversation, so just as an icebreaker. And then you can say, oh, here's a picture of me at SeaWorld, or here's a picture of me, of my family. We went to this interesting restaurant, in the next town over. And so I think it's a really, really easy way. A lot of times when if you say, hey, just talk to your partner next to you, what did you do? They're like, I don't know what I did. But then if they have the picture to look at, then it kind of stimulates some memories for them, and that gets them really talking about what specifically happened, maybe who the people in those pictures are. And then also, when the other person sees those pictures, instead of just hearing about it, they're seeing it and they're going, oh, okay, that makes me think of this. And so just that little bit of visual complement to the conversation can really add a lot of layers of talking points for students to have a quick
Mhm.
icebreaker and to start chatting with each other.
One of the ways that I have seen this work really awesome is when you've got students from just different countries. I know sometimes you tend to have like all Arabic speakers and all from one region, or all Chinese speakers all from one region, but every once in a while you have like the perfect mix. And they'll start talking about food or sharing pictures of food, and they'll say, well, what do you usually eat? Rice tends to be a staple food, but the way they prepare it is different. And so then they start sharing, and then that becomes cultural exchange. And then again, they're proud to show that off.
Yeah.
And speaking, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna add a little bit. Just one thing that we added in
Yeah.
extra there was that if you have the partners ask a minimum of two follow-up questions, then it can really kind of go, oh, instead of just
Oh
going, oh,
yeah.
that's nice, right? Like cool or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, right? Then you can say, well, what are
Question
some,
creation,
yeah,
question
so
formation.
again, more practice, just quick. And then
Mm-hmm.
once they've done that, then they can rotate through and you can do a mingle in the class and everything. But yeah, just a little bit of way to reinforce that they're not just looking and listening, but that they're engaged with the conversation as well.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of feeling pride, I think vision boards comes to mind. It's an activity I did recently with a group of language teachers, international language teachers. And vision boards are not outdated. The paper and magazine cutout ones may be, because you may not find magazines anymore, but you can have students build digital vision boards, and you can have students pick categories of what you want that vision board to represent. So for example, in my class, we did values, fears, hopes, and goals,
Mm.
and then maybe something goofy or something extra. And then they were to find pictures in their photo albums to represent those, and then put them together in a using Canva or using Adobe Express, and then talk
Mm.
about it with the class. And students just, again, the hard part was narrowing down to how many, again, 6 categories or 4 categories, whatever we had. They just wanted to have so many pictures. And so the thing was, nope, you're only allowed one per category. And so again, it helped them to really think about why they were going to place that picture there and why that maybe represented their fear. Um, and if they couldn't find a picture, they were to find an icon somewhere or take a picture of something. They could make a face, for example,
Yeah.
and put it on there. But that got students to talk about them. We projected them on a screen once they were all finished, and it was really neat to see people would look at the screen and then say, oh, why did they put that frog picture there, or a picture of a snail, among other things. So it created a little bit of mystery for the students, and they were really excited to ask questions. And like you said, one of the areas where students could engage in more language production is like, yeah, ask questions about the pictures.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the term, some of those pictures became the running joke of the class. And so one teacher had said, I'm a handsome teacher. Students always call me a handsome teacher. So for the rest of the term, we would say, oh, here comes Mr. Handsome. Here comes Mr. Handsome. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so I like that, and what I'm thinking here too is like you said, well, you could put in
Mhm,
icons, but I would actually probably,
mhm,
at least for the sake of this conversation, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I like the
mhm,
idea of kind of restricting it to pictures that are
mhm.
in your camera roll, right?
Yeah.
And so either pictures that you've taken, or go ahead and take a picture that represents your, your
Mhm.
feelings about something with your face. But I
Yeah.
like that
Like fear
idea.
would have been, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that idea that it's like, hey, no, this is something that I've already had, and so then you have to make like a
Mhm,
little bit more deep thought links into like why does this connect, or
mhm.
or what does this mean, instead of just, oh, I'm going to go on Google and search for, a
Random
picture of
pictures.
a
Yeah. Stock
Ferrari or
photos
something.
with like
Yeah.
the stock watermark.
I stock photo, yeah. So I do like that idea. That's really cool, and also those restrictions expand creativity, right? So you have to
Mhm,
get more thoughtful on ways when you're saying, hey, no, it needs to be a picture that you've already taken, or a
mhm,
photograph that you actually take together. So I really like that. And then the other thing, so now we're moving out of the camera app but back
mhm,
into Canva or Adobe Express or whatever. The one thing I didn't want to do these for a while, because I was like, well, with the old paper ones, you could cut the pictures out and like
mhm.
get the shapes around
Like the
everything.
silhouette,
Yeah, the silhouette, or the, like the just like the,
like a
if it's a
collage.
person, yeah, like making it
Mhm,
really into a collage. And I was like,
mhm,
well, I can't really, those are hard to do with the photos and everything. But now with the remove background option that's on
mhm,
almost all of these apps, you can actually do that in really cool ways. And so you can still
mhm,
do those collages and say, hey, this is the part that I want, and you don't have to cut it out with like a mouse and like go all the way around. You just say, hey, this is the subject, and you only want that part of it, and it just deletes
mhm.
everything else. So yeah, so there's some really cool things in there. All
Cool.
right. My next one is going to the video feature here. So you could turn this into like a breaking news kind of reporter on the street style thing, and you could say, hey, you're going to go out and you're going to find something that's happening, and you're going to go make a little report on it. Going to be kind of some impromptu speaking practice, right? And so for different students, they might have different levels of comfort with that, but it could be something as I mean, they could say, hey, I'm going to go interview someone about something, and just, if they're brave and they're willing to go do that. But they could also just do something like, hey, we went outside the classroom and we sat down in the grass and we saw two ants, fighting over a piece of leaf. And then we just videotaped that and we made that as like a news segment, right? And we say, hey, these two ants are fighting, and this is what's
Mhm.
going on. And they're this ant is representing the hillside and the other ant is representing the valley side. And I don't know, whatever. Like, you could have some real fun
Well,
with it.
I saw an example of this. Another instructor that works with me had something similar where the students were to there was a target grammar point, a
Mm-hmm.
grammar structure, and then they had to create a breaking news segment. And of course, m- our students are kind of shy to go talk to
Mm-hmm.
other people. But what they did is they did a story. We have so many squirrels on campus, and the squirrels are really friendly. They're really tame. um they will beg you for food. So they made a story about killer squirrels
Oh.
at our institution, and then they actually went all out and did a whole script, and then filmed a little segment, and they I think that they used one of the perfect tenses, and so they had to highlight that, which was really cool because now that's a video that people refer to when they're doing um another way of showing of teaching
Yeah.
students that target structure. So, but now you have something else, and the students, of course, loved it. And if you have students that don't want to participate, you can have them be the camera person, or you can have them be the person who helps write the lines, or it doesn't have to be structured as structured as that, but that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, yeah. So lots of different ways to play around with that. So you could say, hey, you have 10 minutes to go out and find something and to make a 2-minute video. Like it's going to have to be on the fly. Or you can say you can plan it out and structure it. So there's lots of different ways to play with that. But in that context, then it makes it accessible for them. So I like that a lot. Yeah, cool.
All right. So the other activity that I haven't tried myself, but I've seen it done successfully so many times. And every time I observe scavenger hunts with the camera, I just think
Mm-hmm.
students are having so much fun. So instead of choosing a photo to talk about, or going through a boring checklist that kind of forces students to either be really creative and go find whatever that is, whether it's something of a particular color. You've done something a little bit different with this one.
Yeah, yeah. I've done ones where I give them like a theme or,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So it'll be like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, water or love or, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then they have to go out and figure out like some picture that they can take right then. And the cool thing, it has to be taken after you've given it to them. So they have to go out and say, oh, okay, this is how this is represented, whether it's they're working in pairs, and if they're saying love and they're kind of swooning over each other and giving like
Mm-hmm.
the batting eyes to one another, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
they go out and they kind of see a couple walking together holding hands, like whatever it might be. So they
Mm-hmm.
can find different ways to express that idea, and then they're going to come back together, and share that with their classmates and say, this is what we came up with for this theme and this is what we found. But the idea with the scavenger hunt is great because it can't be prepared for, it can't be done ahead of time by the students.
Mm-hmm.
Is for us, it's really easy. You just say, hey, here's the word. It could be a color. I've done this years ago when I worked on the boat. I did this and I said, okay, our theme is going to be blue, and of course, there was the ocean, but a lot of the students instantly were like, no, let me figure out something else, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
some of them figured out that blue meant sad, or some of them figured out like
Ah,
other different ways. They did
yes,
blue, but they
different.
found things that were like small or different representations, and then they
Mm-hmm.
went and found and took these artistic pictures of these things, and it was like, and they were coming up with all these really cool ideas because they're saying, oh, I don't want to just be doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. I want to
Yeah,
try and figure out something that's different, and
yeah.
then how does that represent and show what we're talking about. So it was really cool. And then they have a chance to talk to each other and make friends and kind of connect with each other as they're doing those activities too. So I think scavenger hunt is super easy for everybody. And then you can just have them email it to you, or if you have a LMS, they can just upload it right there in a quick assignment.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do it into like Padlet, or there's all sorts of ways to
Mm-hmm.
upload and share the photos.
Yeah,
It's
the platform or whatever choice or whatever
Yeah,
it is that you're using.
yeah. Okay, so the next one is find the similarities. Now, this one is interesting, I think, with the students, because what you can do is you can ask them to pull up a picture on their phone, but not show it to their partner. So, Michelle, maybe if you pulled up a picture and I pulled up a
Right.
picture and we're facing each other and we're looking at it, then we have to start describing our photos, and we're trying to, without looking at the other person's picture, we're trying to find
Mm-hmm.
what similar things are going on between our two photos, right? So it might be something like, oh, we both have children in our photos, or maybe both of our pictures are taken at night, or I don't know, whatever it might be, right? But as they're
Yeah.
talking through, they don't know what the thing is going to be, but there's going to be some common element, right? They might have to
Mm-hmm.
start really digging into details to find it, because
Mm-hmm.
maybe one person took this beautiful landscape photo and another person took a picture of you know dinner at a restaurant, and you're like, well, it's really hard to find something, and you go, oh, well, you
A
know,
color, maybe.
yeah, like the table mat is green and the trees are green. I don't know, something, right? So they're finally figure it
Mhm.
out, but they're gonna really have to talk it through, and then they'll get the joy of looking at them together at the same time at the end and looking at them side by side and going, oh, what did we miss? What do we now that we look at them together? What are we seeing that we might maybe could have talked about or whatever else it is? So, so that's a kind
Mhm.
of a quick and easy way for them to open up and kind of not have to, there's no investment, no time investment. It's just open, find something, and then you guys are just going to quickly talk about it.
Have you ever had like an interesting connection between two photos, like a weird, like, or crazy connection?
I'm trying to think. I feel like my memory's gone so bad these days. I don't remember much of anything. So I don't remember at the moment, but I do remember
Because I
like
bet those are fun to have the
yeah,
weird ones where the like teacher, but how am I supposed to? And then someone else will say, but right there, that's the thing they have in common.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
someone else
yeah.
will find something, right?
There are definitely cases like those, and the students, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've definitely had the students have a lot of fun. I just can't remember the specific details, but like
Mm-hmm.
they really
Mm-hmm.
get into like talking to each other and go, and then
Mm-hmm.
especially once they show each other, then they really get into it, and they're like, oh, this and this and this way. And I've even had them try to finish faster so they can do a second one and see if they can do it that
Mm-hmm.
way. So yeah, it can be like it's surprisingly engaging for something so simple and quick.
Mm-hmm. So the next activity is snap notes. And I think one of the when I think of why am I not using my camera as much in the classroom, and I think it's because we've gotten so used to having a camera that we use it to take snapshots of notes. Or I
Mm-hmm.
remember the times when teachers would complain that my students are taking pictures of the board. That's how they keep track of their homework. They just take a picture. They don't even write it down anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's now what we ask them to do. It's a lot faster and it's there. It's guaranteed. But how often do we crowdsource from their notes what they've taken?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it doesn't go anywhere if we don't have them to share or have them add to some kind of repository or some kind of like Padlet or Wakelet or any of those document, what are they? Document holders,
Yeah.
bookmarkers. But I think when I was teaching teachers, one of the things that they were very good at, and I noticed, oh, they're sharing all of their notes. They're taking pictures of the activities we did in class. They're taking pictures of their demo lessons, and they're all sharing it in their one group so that they all have the ideas. But again, we're not doing that with our students who are not teachers who need to share their own resources so that they can have, a study guide or another way of looking at a particular concept. And just I think maybe it could be extra credit. It
Yeah.
could be an additional because it is extra, and then it encourages someone with the nice handwriting or like more careful notes. And I have seen that. It's like, oh, I want to take a picture of your notes because they're so pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
So snap notes.
Well, I also think too here, like one of the things, I'm guilty of this. Like I'll take a screenshot or I'll take a picture of a board or something like that, and then I'll go back and look at it later. I'm like, well, why did I take this
Mm-hmm.
picture? Or what did I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I
And
think
it
as a
gets deleted.
yeah, it gets deleted. And so like as a teacher, we can actually say like, hey, no, if you're taking pictures, great. Now you have to tell me what the picture means. Like why what did you learn out of this, right? Like what is the especially if it's a lot of times I don't know why students do this, but they'll take a picture of the slides that you have the slide deck available for them. It's like, hey,
That's
here's the
just
link.
again, I tell them I'm sharing the slides. Nope, that's an extra step because you've got to download it. You have to conserve it in a separate repository, which is
Yeah,
not your photo album. That's their logic, I
right.
think.
I know,
So I've offered all my slides.
but the ones where they're taking pictures of notes that you write on the board or
Mhm.
concepts or whatever else it might
Mhm.
be, and then it's like, hey, tell me why you took this picture. What's going on in here? What
Mhm.
were you trying to save out of this? Because that's the reinforcement learning that they can really value from, even if they just take an extra 2 minutes to
Is
write
there
about
you're
it.
synthesizing is
Yeah,
what you're doing.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Um,
so they don't
that
do that nearly enough, right? And so if you
mhm.
turn that part, if you say, hey, if you're taking pictures, great, that means you have to send me a quick note about what it meant and why you did it, right? And then that becomes a quick homework assignment, or hey, you needed to do this once per day in class. I don't know, whatever it might be. You can play around with the way that works for you, but that could be that, like you said, that synthesis, that reinforcement learning where they're going, oh, okay, there's a reason why I took out my camera for this. but I can't just have the note itself. It has to be connected to something that makes sense to me. And so,
You
and
know,
then sharing that back.
one of the things that I think will make that a little bit easier and maybe more common for a user to do is that the new iOS, and I don't know if Android phones do this already, but every picture that you take will now have a little field that says photo notes,
Yes. Yeah.
photo captions. And so I think, I don't know if I have the beta version, but I think the more visible it is, the more likely we are to actually start indexing our own notes. Because right now you're just putting them in albums, where I've seen other apps will take the voice notes and then you'll categorize them. But now if you could do that with your photos, now again, that's a whole other dimension that we're gonna have to grapple with.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll figure it out. We'll work into it. So okay, so the next one that I had was this idea of a story link, which is basically same type of thing, kind of connected to the different activities from before, but this is one where they all pull out a photograph. So maybe you have a group of 4 students and they all choose one photograph and then they put out their phone together and then they have to use those pictures to create a story, right? So that maybe one person pulls out a picture of a mountain and another person pulls out a picture of, 4 people talking, right? Another person pulls out a picture of some food, right? And then they make up the story that says, oh, last week my family went hiking in the mountains and then we ate seafood or I don't know, whatever it is, right? It's a simple
Oh,
version.
you can have categories, right? Like first thing could be an item, the second thing has to be include a person, the third thing has to be a food, the fourth thing has to be a location or something like
Right,
that. And then
right.
you have like,
So you can
that's
scaffold
cool.
this as much or as little as you want, right? So you could say like, hey, one person has to find this and this and this, or you can just say nothing, right? So no rules, but you guys are going to have to make that connection between them, right?
Mhm.
Because so for
What do
example,
you think the story is?
yeah, what do you think the story is? What's going on here? How do you turn
Mhm.
this into a storyboard, basically, of like a continuation of the story? And so, what I had said, in the article originally was, maybe you have kids in one picture and adults in another.
Mhm.
Well, maybe those are the same people that have gotten older over time, right? And so something happened. What's going on with those people, right? And so
Or
you have to
maybe they
kind of
went
open
back
up
in.
your yeah. You have to open up your creativity a little bit.
Yeah.
So you could scaffold it more, like you said, for the beginning levels, and you could release that scaffolding as you get higher levels. But again, they're all just picking something that they already have, and then they're trying to link it with each other and see how they can make a story out of that. So I think there's some real
And
opportunities there. Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking this is so cool because then you could have the story or different interpretations that the students had in little typed paragraphs. And then you could put the same items onto Chat GPT and see.
Oh yeah,
And maybe students have to now identify which one was created by Chat GPT and
I
just
like
have
that.
it right at a similar level, a similar language learning level.
I like that. And then you know what
Interesting.
you could also do? You as the teacher, you could drop your phone with a picture in the middle of theirs at the end and say, "Okay, now you got to figure out how to mix this one in there too, right?"
Curveball. It's like the emoji, the power emoji paragraph,
Paragraph, uh-huh.
emoji power paragraph, but like with real photos.
Yeah. So you can kind of keep mixing it up and then they go, "Oh, wait a second. Does this have to go in the middle or is this going to go at the end or what's going to happen?" Right? So yeah, some really cool opportunities there. All right.
Okay, so the next one that I love this one because it's kind of simple, but it worked so well. And this is just poster videos. And I often had to teach difficult research topics to my language learners. Two of them stuck out because they were so just dense in terms of like just terminology and
No, not the students. You're
ability.
talking you're talking about the
No, no,
content.
I'm
Okay.
talking about the concept.
Got it.
One was the domestication of the fox, and then crossbreeding of potatoes.
Oh yeah, you've talked about
So,
that before. Yeah.
oh my gosh, and I worked so hard to make that into a more meaningful activity. So finally, I settled on the fact that I'm not going to test them on the article and go to paragraph blah blah blah. What did they mean by this? I'm going to ask them now the questions, and they have to somehow portray that or illustrate it however they want on a poster with markers and paper
Hmm.
in a group. But then each one of them has to explain it in a video. And they could either talk while filming the poster or they could have themselves in front of the poster. So I had some shy students. But I found that they were actually using the target vocabulary they were able to better, in their own words, tell me the key, the key takeaway, like the questions, the critical thinking questions. They were able to explain it, where I felt, yeah, the student understood. They may not
Mm,
have the full vocabulary, but they understood. So they're not going to have trouble when they go into university. Rather than saying, okay, on a piece of paper, on a paper test or whatever test we're giving them, they're going to memorize information and they're just going to regurgitate what they think I want the answer to be. And then
mm,
I'm not really assessing whether they can communicate, which for me was much more powerful.
nice.
And of course, because they had to record over and over and over, they learned how to pronounce domestication. They learned how to pronounce Balayev, who was the guy, and they learned how to say certain things. And they would joke about it later. I'll never forget about potatoes from your class.
The important things to remember in life.
Okay.
Crossbreeding of potatoes. Uh, we joke, but who knows?
Joke.
The way the world is going, they might be the survivors.
I know.
Okay, so next one is my last one is recreations. So this one, I just thought, it can just be kind of fun, silly. It's not a big deal. I mean, but it's actually going to take a lot of conversation and a lot of kind of detail explaining. So those activities, and we've talked about them before, where you get a picture and then you explain it to someone, and then they try and draw that picture, right? And try and draw whatever you're saying. So it's like, oh, there's an apple on the corner of the table, and then there's a door on the right
Mhm,
hand side of the room, or whatever else it is, right?
mhm,
And so what I thought is it might be cool to do this with a photo that you already have in your phone. So you pull something up and then you explain it, and then the other people in your group are responsible to try to actually recreate that photo as you're explaining it, right? So maybe if it's a portrait photo, okay, no, they're gonna have to turn more towards the right, and then they're gonna make sure that you're facing this direction and the sun's coming at you this way. Or if it's a group photo, right, you say, oh well, the child is smiling bigger, or the person who's the dad would be distracted, whatever it is, right? And so then they're trying to recreate the photo as you're talking and telling them about it, and then they'll take that photo, and then finally you'll compare side by side, right? So it's kind of similar to the one that we had talked about before, but this one's actually where they're recreating it. Instead of just trying to find similarities, they're actually trying to make it look the same as the photo that you took. And then you can kind of have these, like, this is what my real one looked like, this is what you guys made, and again, that same conversation there. But
that takes some very brave students.
yeah, but I think, like, if you had them in kind of small groups off to the side with each other, then
Mhm,
they could really
yeah.
do it, right? And so it depends on what the original photo is too, right? Because
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be people, right? It could say, hey, this was a picture,
No.
this is a picture of a building that I took, and like, okay, well,
No.
how do we get a matching photo of a building that doesn't look anything like that? And so then you could
Well,
also give like little awards and say like, okay,
mhm.
closest recreation, most creative interpretation, and everybody could vote on them and say like, oh, okay, well, these ones are totally different, but we see what they were trying to do, so I like that. Or I mean, there could be a lot of fun ways to
Yeah,
kind of
no,
make it.
I've seen something similar
Mm-hmm.
where one of our teachers had the student, I was observing, a teacher had the students recreate, she gave a card, and on the card was either a picture or a phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And then that student had to act it out. It was not on a camera, but they had to act again. I was using a picture, but you could do this from your camera folder, your picture folder. And one of the pictures, the silly penguin. I think it was silly penguin with a penguin. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy kind of looked like a penguin. And it was so funny because I knew what it was, and the students were like, "No, it's a," because he was kind of, waddling
Uh-huh.
and kind of moving around. I was like, "Oh, you're drunk. You're drunk." No, it's not a drunk person. They never got it at the end. I was like, "Penguin," but it was funny. But I could see how that would work in small groups. That would be fun.
Yeah,
And
and
they
then
would
like,
enjoy seeing the pictures. They would love to see, like, oh, look at that. That's you when you're doing building.
yeah, exactly. So there really is, and then those are like the kind of things that slowly open people up to each other over the course of the
Mhm,
classes as well. So it's like, if you're willing
mhm.
to just let loose a little bit this time, then people kind of go, oh, like they're
Oh
okay,
yeah.
like I can,
Like
so
that
anyways.
last hour, like Yeah, when you have students all day long, if you have them all day long, or if you have that one long class on Fridays, that last hour could be something like that. And I love doing those kind of activities.
Yeah.
And the last activity here is using Apple Clips or CapCut. And that's again using one of these apps to add captions into the videos to see how well it processes what you're saying. You could also pause for
When's
a
the last
second.
time you used Apple Clips, Michelle? Has it been a while?
It has been a while, but that's because so many of the other apps um, have that built in, that function built into it. I don't know that they're language
Yeah.
apps because I see things wrong, all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Well, then none of them
Mhm,
are, but like that's that for sure. I went back and downloaded Apple Clips again recently, and I'm like, oh, this is actually
mhm,
surprisingly robust. And so because
mhm,
I was getting these ads on Instagram or something. Hey, do you know how, like, because those are the hot thing right now, right? Is those TikTok videos or the Instagram reels or whatever that have like the text over the video so that you don't have to listen to it to be able to see what's going
You can
on.
just
And so I think that's a good practice for the students too, is like that's a system that they're used to seeing, but then with the language, when they'll see how it's understanding them, it might go, oh, wait a second, this is not what I said. Either it missed the pronunciation, or now I recognize, after I'm reading it, I recognize that the grammar is a little bit off, right? But
mhm,
with those ones, the students can then go back in and change the language, right? So they can go
mhm.
back in and change that captioning. And so
Oh,
that's really good
the
practice.
incorrect part, you
Right,
mean?
right. And so then
Mm,
that's really good practice for them to like spend the time with their own, with themselves speaking it, and then
mhm,
changing and updating the language. Because let's say they said the word, if they're like, I don't know, if they're Korean and they have the P and the F issue, for example, and they say, "Oh, this is this is a pyre," and it's like they meant to say fire, right? And so so they might then go in and go, "Oh, it's still hearing that P, but I'm going to go back in and write it so that it says F, so that people would still know what I'm saying if they looked at the video, right?" And so I think there's a lot of
So,
opportunity for building back and practicing their own language and understanding what's being interpreted from what they hear.
mhm. So where I think this is way more useful than using this simple like talk to Siri and record yourself and see if if it's reading, if it's capturing what you're saying correctly.
Mm-hmm.
The extension that this has, Apple Clips or CapCut, is that you can add a photo. And I think when a student's looking at a photo and saying something, or a video and narrating that,
Mm-hmm.
like because I have my students narrate often, is that they have to make the connection as they're seeing the picture. So I think it's like another layer of reinforcing what they're seeing rather than just memorizing a word. And I say this because I have students from Vietnam who often miss certain syllables or certain letters endings, I think it is in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
And they know, but as they're seeing it, it creates another connection in their brain. And I think that it makes them even more aware of it. So it makes them slow down and actually try to pronounce that they're dropping off. I think also with my Thai students, it
Yeah,
happens.
yeah,
But I like that you can have a photo or a video with the text there, because
yeah,
it's not just the text by itself.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it because especially if they're talking about something that they're interested in or care about, then they're going to be more prone to
Mhm.
wanting to fix it and make sure that it's clear, so that they're sharing with other people, like sharing their passions or interests or whatever it is with other people clearly, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
really valuable and interesting way to approach it. So cool. All right. So if you've been using AI in your classes, we would love to hear about it. I know there have been a few people I've seen posting a few things out there. And so how's it been going? What's going on? We'd love to you to write a guest article for our sister site, aiinesl.com. So please feel free to share that. And we've also added a YouTube channel. So we mentioned that at the beginning of the show. Please go check out the YouTube channel or subscribe if you like having the show on in the background while you're vacuuming or whatever else we might be doing. Some, I don't know. I don't use YouTube to listen to podcasts, Michelle, but we talked about that at the beginning. But I totally get it
Yeah.
that people do, and so just having it on in the background might be a good way. And we'd love it, and maybe we'll throw up some extras or some other things as well in there too. So YouTube channel, we'll have links to everything in the show notes.
All right, it is time for our fun finds. And this time, Brent, I have the live action version of One Piece on Netflix. And you know
Okay.
what? I have never seen the show.
I've never
I did
either.
attempt to read volume one in Japanese once, and I
Mm-hmm.
got past like maybe the first 10 pages and
Mm-hmm.
still did not understand because it took so long for me to translate.
Yeah.
So I just dropped it. But I know that this series has inspired so many people and has created a whole like fandom of non-Japanese speakers and introduced them to the Japanese culture and the Japanese language. And I've got students from the Middle East who have been inspired by the main character's attitude toward trouble and hardship.
Hmm.
And so I finally decided, you know what? Let me just watch an episode. And it's actually really well done. I've never seen the series. I mean, it's I guess it's for a general audience, and but I can see it's very much it mimics the way that anime, like the scenes and the close-ups or what manga might look like.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters do remind me of what I've seen, at least how I've seen them drawn or how I've seen them depicted. And so far I'm on episode 3 and it's pretty good.
Really?
And I
Okay.
can see why. Yeah, so I do recommend it. It's fans of the original say it's just like a fast-paced version of I don't know how many episodes there are. There are like
There's a lot,
hundreds
right?
of them, I think. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's actually a pretty good show.
Okay.
So,
So that's interesting to hear. So One Piece. So this is a long running anime from Japan.
mhm,
I have never been able to watch or read One Piece myself, and I know people love it, but I've never been able to
mhm.
watch it or read it myself because I just kind of I've never liked the art. I've never liked how the characters look. They
It's
all
like
look
grotesque.
yeah, they all look a little
Yeah.
bit grotesque, and it just like doesn't appeal to me in any way. And so like I don't
Mhm.
know what the stories are about, but I know people go absolutely like they just love it, right?
Yeah.
And it's
They cry.
it's
I've seen people who've cried
yeah.
after a particular book or
Yeah, so
so.
I've been unable to get interested in it because of the kind of the weird
Give it a
grotesque.
chance. You might like it. The main character, um, he's likable, I think. He's interesting. He's quirky, he's weird, and you kind of wonder how they're going to portray that in a live action version. So far I feel like okay, I'm invested now. After 3 episodes, I'm invested. So
Okay, maybe.
what do you
But
have?
I'll tell you. So interestingly, we both chose
Mhm.
Japanese animes. I chose another one. So I because to prove that I am open minded to trying things that I would never have tried before. I actually got and my wife introduced this to me recently is Detective
Mhm.
Conan, which is
Mhm.
I guess in English I looked it up on Wikipedia. It's complicated, but it's also called Case Closed because the name Conan
Ah,
is mixed with so many other intellectual
mhm.
property rights things. But I
Interesting.
never read this or watched it before because I thought it was a total
Mhm.
kids show, and it kind of is, but it's also very not a kids show. Basically, it's a 30-minute
Mhm.
murder mystery anime and manga where this
Mhm.
it looks like a young child, but he's actually a high school student that was given some
Mhm.
sort of poison that shrunk his body
Mhm.
into becoming a child.
Why
But
does this always happen to the characters?
I don't know.
It's like the guy from One Piece, he ate something and he stretches.
I think it's because like that's what like makes it
Is
appeal
it
to
superpower?
kids somehow. Super like make anyways for Conan anyways it makes him kind of
Mhm.
like kids can watch it and feel like they're him even though he's like intellectually superior or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But it's kind of fun and the reason that I actually am enjoying this right now is one it's the murder mystery and so it's kind of
Is
fun
it
to
like
play
the
along.
anime or because there's a live version
I'm
too, I
watching
think.
the anime. I don't know about a
Okay.
live version. I'm watching the anime of it.
Mhm.
It's got like 20 seasons or something like that. It's been on
Mhm.
forever
Yeah.
since like the mid 90s. And
Yep.
so
Mhm.
um but
Interesting.
but it's really interesting. And then the part that I really like is that it's just all real Japanese. So for my language practice, it's
Mhm.
not like some of these ones,
Awesome.
like I don't know about One Piece. I assume that there's a lot of kind of fake fantasy language because it seems like they're doing like well, those things. I
Mhm.
kind of got into Naruto a long time ago as it was interesting and fun, but then I'm like, but nobody speaks like this at all. And so one of the important things for me is about learning language is like if you get into these kind of fantasy things, they make up all sorts of language that doesn't exist. It's like trying to study English with Harry Potter, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
you don't need to know like these spell casting words, whatever it is. And so this is the same type of situation that I have. And so,
Leviosa.
anyways, Conan is good. It's real language.
Very cool.
Yeah, so worth checking out.
All right. So please share the show, buy us a coffee, join our Patreon, or leave us some feedback. If you're giving us a shout out any other way, tag us on social media.
And the YouTube,
You can find the show
the
and
tube,
the YouTube channel, the tube.
on the
Follow
tube.
us. We have like 10 subscribers. We're going to be begging for subscribers now. That's the keyword. The show notes and other episodes are at diesel.org/89. You can listen at voiceed.ca. You can also find us on Twitter. You can
Yep.
find the show at Sopod.
You can find me at Brent G. Warner.
And you can still find me at Xie_Pixie.
Uh, yeah, you can find. Yeah, we're gonna have to have a longer social media
Well,
conversation
we're still
sometime in
we're
the
still
future.
going through an identity crisis there.
I
So
know it's rough. Okay.
in Greek, thank you is Sevharisto. Sevharisto for tuning in to the Diesel podcast.
Thanks, everybody.